I ride a 350cc Triumph motorbike. My brother mixed with all the lads who had bad reputations and no one would dare upset them, and he was in the final year at school, Tring Secondary Modern, Mortimer Hill. He was friends with all the lads who were in trouble. One friend was Bob Shearer, who lived on a farm in Tring, and I recall Michael having a 350 old Triumph motorbike with girder front forks. I took courage and rode this bike in the field and was quite pleased with myself for having the courage to ride such a big bike. I had until that time only ridden a moped. It was during this time at Wilston that my brother got sent to his first spell in detention centre. He had made a knuckle duster at school in the metalwork classes and tried it out by hitting some boy in the village. What happened was this. Some lads had found my moped in the field and had a go at riding it without any permission. Not that they would know who to ask, but my brother felt he would sort them out for riding it. I think it was just an excuse to use his newly made knuckle duster. When the police were called in, he made out the knuckle duster was made for a part for the moped, and my mum was certain that this was true, and she defended my brother to the hilt. I knew it wasn't true, and my brother did too. He did a spell in Oxford Detention Centre for 3 months for grievous bodily harm. I didn't go along with my brother's violence and could not understand it. His reputation spread at school, and teachers began to identify me with my brother, and I think they began to be wary of me too. Village life proved too much for my mum, and she became depressed due to the way things were and the trouble that Michael had gotten into, so it was decided to sell up and move from our village shop to our house in Aylesbury. Once we'd sold the village shop, Mum and I moved to Oldham, whilst Michael and Dad moved into lodgings at Aston Clinton. This was whilst our house was being built off the plan. Mum and I moved to live in with my Aunt Edith at 26 Fleet Street, in the town where I was born, and I had to go to school. This was Clarksfield Senior School, and I became a bit of a celebrity because I was from London. This status increased when I told the lads about my trips to Soho. It was here that I first heard the Beatles, as they were playing in Oldham at that time. The song I remember popular was Love Me Do, which came out in October 1962. During my time at Oldham, we were there for about 3 months, I built a balsa wood controlled line aircraft, a radio transmitter for remote control aircraft, and I learned to ice skate. We had very cold winter that year, and it was the coldest on record, and snow fell in all the streets and froze over. My mum bought me a pair of second-hand ice skates, and I learned to skate on those frozen streets in Oldham. After staying for a while at Oldham, we moved back to Watford and lived with my dad's mum. On this occasion, I had to go back to Francis Coombs Secondary School, and I renewed acquaintances with my old school friends. It was during this time that I made my own transistor radio set. I also missed riding my moped, so I got up one morning very early and walked into Watford, where I knew a motorbike was parked, and I stole it. I drove it for several miles and placed it in a parking place and went home. I later used it for joyriding with my friends. I walked miles that morning, and my mum knew nothing about it. Michael also used to visit us at Watford to see his old friends too. One of them played in a pop group. On one occasion, Michael gave me a pair of bell-bottom trousers and a shirt with a long pointed collar. Michael and his friend wanted to take me to a dance that was at Leavesden on a Friday night. I really enjoyed myself there and wanted to go again. I met some of my friends at school there, and one boy noticed my clothes and said that I was a mod. Unfortunately for me, after this I began to get bullied at school by a group of boys who were what you might call Jack the Lads. I learned afterwards the reason why it was that I was bullied, and it was to do with Michael. One of the boys was from Australia. He was the ringleader, and he had a girlfriend at school called Pat Petty. She was every boy's dream of a girl. Well, Michael had met her at the Leavesden dance and chatted her up, and the Australian boy was jealous, and as soon as he realised that I was Michael's brother, they had it in for me at school. This is the radio set that I made. I obtained the circuit diagram for a 2-transistor reflex receiver with the components that I obtained from Tottenham Court Road in London. I built this on a small Paxilin board, which was before printed circuit boards were readily available. I was very pleased with this, as it had good sensitivity and very good selectivity, and was about the size of a matchbox. At that time, Mum and Dad took me and my sister Margaret, who was about 3 years old, to Newquay for a holiday. I didn't know what kind of place it was, but when we got there it was great. The sand and the sea and the surfing and the views were a treat to see. It was here that I conducted my first blag, or a scheme or a scam you might say, as I wanted to explore the Headlands Hotel, which was an impressive hotel. Anyway, on this occasion I took Margaret by the hand and we walked down the long drive to the hotel. As we approached the hotel, a steward of some kind came up to me and asked if he could help. I confidently replied, "No thank you, we stay here." He stood upright in embarrassment and said, "Oh yes, I remember the little girl." So he blagged it, and I wandered around the hotel with my 3-year-old sister, admiring all the rooms and what was there. My brother and I returned to Newquay for a holiday in 1967, just before we were sent to prison. Our new home was situated on the Bedgrove estate in Aylesbury, and was ready for us to move in April 1963. However, before we left Wilston, I had enjoyed riding my moped in the old orchard in the village. It belonged to a friend of Michael, but I was allowed to ride it, and it was a 50cc NSU Quickly, and we kept it in the orchard. Once we'd moved to our new home in Aylesbury, I was able to return to Wilston and get the engine from the frame, and put it in a homemade go-kart frame. I made the go-kart frame for builder's wood that I took from the building site. I used the moped engine, a set of wheels from a Charles 3-wheeler tricycle, various parts from a cement mixer, and I began to ride this machine around the new roads in the housing estate. However, I was eventually stopped by the local police and warned that it was illegal to ride a go-kart on the roads, and soon after that the local newspaper came and gave me a write-up in the local newspaper. And this is what the paper said. An Aylesbury boy was able to return to school after the Easter holidays and proudly tell his friends, "I've made a go-kart in the holidays." He is 14 years old. On Sunday of last week, a friend gave David, pictured above, an old moped. As he was unable to ride it, as he was too young, he dismantled it. He then made a cart frame from some pieces of wood and 4 old wheels and a set of handlebars and a moped engine. Within 3 days it was in working condition, and David estimates it will do 20 miles an hour. Incidentally, David, who has lived in the town for only a month, has very little real interest in engines. His main hobby is radio construction work, and one of his proudest possessions is a transistor radio which he built that is slightly larger than a matchbox.